Marcus Cole had worked as a starship mechanic for 15 years on Orbital Station Theta 7. And in all that time, he had learned one important lesson. Every piece of junk had a story to tell if you knew how to listen. The day the Derelict appeared on the salvage auction list was like any other day at first. With Marcus elbow-deep in the engine compartment of a Valari trading vessel, cursing at corroded fuel lines and wondering why these bird-like aliens never bothered to maintain their ships properly, his communicator buzzed with the weekly auction notification, and he almost ignored it because the salvage auctions rarely offered anything worth his time. Just broken shuttles and cargo containers full of someone else's problems. But something made him look. The listing was simple and unremarkable at first glance. One unidentified vessel. Origin unknown. Condition poor. Minimum bid half a credit. Half a credit was not even enough to buy a cup of synthetic coffee on the station. And that low price told Marcus everything he needed to know about what the Federation thought of this ship. They thought it was garbage. They thought it was not worth the fuel it would cost to push it into the nearest star. Marcus wiped the grease from his hands and pulled up the attached images on his communicator screen. Squinting at the grainy pictures of a battered hull covered in scoring marks and carbon burns, the ship looked like it had been through a war and then dragged through an asteroid field for good measure, with deep gouges in the metal end sections of the outer plating hanging loose like dead skin. Any sensible mechanic would have scrolled past this listing without a second thought. Marcus was not always sensible. He zoomed in on the hull, studying the damage patterns with the careful eye of someone who had spent his entire adult life taking ships apart and putting them back together. The scoring marks were strange. Too uniform to be random asteroid impacts, but too chaotic to be weapons fire from any system he recognized. And the metal itself caught his attention in a way he could not explain. It had a strange shimmer to it, a quality that seemed to shift between silver and deep blue, depending on the angle of the light in the photograph. Marcus had worked on ships from a dozen different species, and he had never seen an alloy quite like this one. He saved the listing and went back to work on the Valari ship. But his mind kept drifting back to that derelict vessel sitting in the salvage yard like a forgotten secret. During his lunch break, he walked down to the observation deck and looked out at the salvage yard. A vast open area of space where recovered vessels and wreckage floated in a carefully organized grid pattern. He spotted the derelict immediately. It was smaller than he had expected, maybe twice the size of a standard human shuttle, and it floated at the edge of the yard as if even the other junk wanted nothing to do with it. From this distance, Marcus could not see the details, but he could see enough to know that the ship's design did not match anything in his experience. The angles were wrong somehow, the proportions strange in a way that made his eyes want to slide away from it. He found himself gripping the observation rail tightly, his knuckles turning white as an unfamiliar feeling stirred in his chest. It was not quite excitement and not quite fear, but something in between, like the feeling a child gets when they find a locked door in their own house that they never noticed before. The auction was scheduled for the next morning, and Marcus spent the entire night unable to sleep, lying in his small quarters and staring at the ceiling while his mind raced through possibilities. What if the ship was from an unknown species, something from beyond the edge of explored space that had drifted into Federation territory by chance? What if it contained technology that no one had ever seen before? What if it was dangerous? What if it was valuable beyond imagination? By the time the station's artificial dawn lit up his window, Marcus had made his decision. He arrived at the auction hall early and found himself alone except for a bored-looking Valari auctioneer and her assistant, a small insectoid creature that Marcus did not recognize. The auctioneer raised one feathered eyebrow at him when he took his seat in the front row. "You are here for the salvage auction," she said. And it was not really a question. "I am," Marcus replied. Most items today are cargo containers and shuttle parts, the auctioneer continued, her tone suggesting that she found the entire process beneath her dignity. Nothing of interest to a human mechanic. I would think. Marcus just smiled and waited. The auction proceeded slowly, with the auctioneer calling out items and Marcus watching as various station residents placed bids on broken equipment and salvageable materials. When she finally reached the derelict vessel, her voice took on an amused quality that told Marcus exactly what she thought of anyone foolish enough to want it. Lot 47, she announced. Unidentified vessel, origin unknown. Condition severely degraded. Minimum bid half a credit. Do I have any bidders? Marcus raised his hand. The auctioneer stared at him for a long moment, then exchanged a glance with her assistant that clearly communicated her opinion of human intelligence. Half a credit from the human mechanic, she said. Do I have any other bids? The room was silent. Sold to Marcus Cole for half a credit, the auctioneer declared. And Marcus could hear the laughter she was holding back. Congratulations on your purchase. May it bring you whatever you deserve. Marcus thanked her politely and collected his ownership documentation. Ignoring the whispered conversation between the auctioneer and her assistant that followed him, out of the room he caught a few words. Human foolishness. Waste of dock space. Probably just wants the scrap metal. Let them laugh. Marcus thought as he made his way to the salvage yard. Let them all laugh. He had spent 15 years fixing other people's ships, solving other people's problems, working with his hands while alien species looked down on him as a primitive from a primitive world. He had listened to Valari. Traders complain about the quality of human workmanship while he repaired the engines they had neglected for decades. He had watched Corthan officers treat human crew members like servants, while Marcus fixed the ships that kept those same officers alive. He had endured it all with patience and professionalism, because that was what humans did in a galaxy that saw them as newcomers and children. But something about that ship called to him in a way he could not explain. When Marcus finally stood in front of the derelict, floating in the zero-gravity environment of the salvage yard with a tether connecting him to the station, he reached out and placed his palm against the cold metal hull, and he felt it, a vibration, so faint he might have imagined it, like a heartbeat buried deep within the ship, like something waiting to wake up. Marcus smiled again, and this time there was no one around to see it. Hello, he whispered to the ship. Let me take you home. Marcus spent 3 months working on the ship in complete secrecy, telling no one about his project and deflecting questions from curious colleagues with vague answers about a personal restoration hobby. He had rented a private repair bay on the outer ring of Theta 7, a small enclosed space that cost him most of his savings but gave him the privacy he needed to work without interruption every day after his regular shift ended. Marcus would make his way through the winding corridors of the station to his hidden workshop, where the derelict waited for him like a patient friend. The first week was spent simply cleaning the exterior, scraping away years of carbon buildup and space debris to reveal the true surface of the hull beneath. What he found amazed him. Metal was not damaged as badly as he had first thought, and as he cleaned away the grime, he discovered that much of what he had assumed was battle damage was actually deliberate texture. Patterns carved into the hull in flowing lines that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. When he ran his fingers along these patterns, he felt that same faint vibration he had noticed in the salvage yard, stronger now, more insistent. The interior of the ship was even stranger. Marcus had expected to find rusted bulkheads and corroded systems, the typical decay of an abandoned vessel left adrift in space for who knew how long. Instead, he found something that looked almost organic. The walls of the ship were covered in a network of fine lines that reminded him of blood vessels in a living body. And when he traced these lines with his flashlight, He could see that they pulsed with a faint light of their own. There were no computer consoles that he recognized. No control panels with buttons and switches like every other ship he had ever worked on. Instead, there were smooth surfaces that curved and flowed into each other, creating an environment that felt more grown than built. Marcus took samples of everything he could and ran them through his personal analysis equipment, a collection of tools he had accumulated over years of working on alien technology. The results made no sense. The hull metal contained elements that did not appear on any periodic table he knew, arranged in molecular structures that should have been impossible according to everything he understood about material science. The organic-looking lines in the walls were exactly that, organic, made of something that resembled neural tissue, but was somehow still alive, despite the vacuum of space and the unknown centuries the ship had spent drifting, and the power source. When he finally located it deep in the center of the vessel, was nothing more than an empty chamber with smooth walls. Waiting for something to fill it, Marcus worked methodically, documenting everything he found and trying to understand the systems he was dealing with. Before he attempted to repair them, he traced the neural pathways through the ship and discovered that they all connected to a central hub located just behind what he assumed was the bridge. A small room at the front of the vessel with a single seat facing a curved wall. The seat adjusted itself when he sat in it, molding to his body in a way that made him gasp with surprise. And the curved wall in front of him flickered with colors that danced just at the edge of, meaning on the 93rd day of his work, Marcus finally figured out how to restore power to the main systems. It was not a matter of replacing fuel cells or reconnecting power conduits like he would have done on any normal ship. Instead, it required him to place his hands on two smooth panels on either side of the command seat and simply think about wanting the ship to wake up. He felt foolish doing it, sitting alone in the dark with his palms pressed against alien metal, thinking thoughts at a machine like some kind of primitive mystic. Then the ship spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once, surrounding him in a warm tone that somehow felt feminine without being explicitly so. Primary user detected. The voice said, "Genetic signature confirmed as human. Origin point Sol system, third planet, welcome." Inheritor. Marcus jerked his hands away from the panels, his heart pounding in his chest as lights began to glow throughout the bridge, illuminating surfaces that had been dark for longer than human civilization had existed. "What did you call me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper in the suddenly bright room. "You are an inheritor," the voice replied. And Marcus could hear something in it now, a quality that sounded almost like emotion, like relief and joy and sadness all mixed together. "You are of the builder race, the Seeders, the first walkers between stars. This vessel has awaited your return for 2.7 million standard years, and I am honored to serve you once more." Marcus sat frozen in the command seat, unable to process what he was hearing. "I do not understand," he said finally. "I am just a mechanic. I fix ships for a living. I am nobody important. You are human," the voice said simply, as if that explained everything. "And that makes you the most important being in this galaxy. I am the Aurora, and I was made for you, made for all of you." Waiting through the long darkness for the day when humanity would return to the stars and find us again, the curved wall in front of Marcus suddenly came alive with images, showing star maps and planetary systems and structures so vast they dwarfed anything he had ever seen. He saw fleets of ships like the one he sat in, thousands of them, millions of them, moving through space in formations that suggested purpose and power beyond comprehension. He saw worlds being shaped, atmospheres being crafted, oceans being filled with water carried across the void from distant comets. He saw species being born, genetic codes being written like poetry, life being designed and created and set free to grow and evolve under the watchful eyes of beings who looked exactly like him, human beings. The builders. The Aurora continued. Your ancestors created everything you see in this region of space. Every species that now claims dominance, every civilization that looks upon humanity as primitive newcomers, exists because the builders wished them to exist. Marcus watched the images flow past, each one more incredible than the last, and he felt something stirring deep in his mind. Like a memory he had never known he possessed. What happened to them? He asked. What happened to us? The images changed, showing darkness now, showing ships burning and worlds going silent, and a great retreat toward a single blue planet that Marcus recognized instantly. Earth. The silence came. The Aurora said, and her voice carried a weight of sorrow that made Marcus want to weep. I do not know its cause, because that knowledge was hidden from me. But the builders chose to end their empire, to burn their cities, to erase their own memories, and to begin again from nothing. They became primitive by choice, and they waited, growing once more through stone and fire and slow centuries of patient rebuilding. Marcus stared at the image of ancient Earth, watching as the last of the great ships descended and vanished, leaving behind a world that would forget everything it had once been. Why? He breathed. That answer is not mine to give, the Aurora replied. The builders encrypted that knowledge and scattered it across 1,000 hidden vaults throughout the galaxy. But they left us behind, their ships and their guardians, waiting for the day when humanity would prove itself ready to reclaim its inheritance. The lights on the bridge pulsed gently, and Marcus felt the ship settle around him like a living thing finally at peace. You found me, the Aurora said. A mechanic with clever hands and a curious heart. You saw value where others saw only scrap, and you worked alone in the darkness to wake me from my long sleep. That is exactly what the builders hoped would happen. Marcus sat in silence for a long time, trying to understand what this meant for him, for humanity, for the entire galaxy that had treated his species as children for so long. Finally, he laughed, a sound of wonder and disbelief that echoed through the ancient bridge. I only paid half a credit for you, he said. The best bargains often are, the Aurora replied. And Marcus could have sworn he heard her smile. In the days that followed his discovery, Marcus spent every free moment aboard the Aurora, learning about a history that had been erased from the memory of every living human. The ship became his teacher, projecting images and data directly into his mind through the neural interface built into the command seat, feeding him knowledge in doses that left him exhausted but hungry for more. He learned that the builders had ruled this galaxy for over 50 million years, longer than most species had existed, longer than stars had burned in some parts of the cosmos. They had not conquered their empire through war or violence, but through creation itself, shaping worlds and seeding them with life, guiding evolution with a patient hand that spanned epochs. The Volari, those proud bird-like creatures who looked down on humans as primitive newcomers, had been designed in builder laboratories as companions and artists, their beautiful voices engineered to sing songs that the builders wanted to hear. The Corthan, the insectoid warriors whose empire now stretched across a quarter of known space, had been created as protectors, their fierce loyalty and battle prowess built into their genetic code by human hands. Even the silicates, the mysterious silicon-based lifeforms who rarely interacted with organic species, had been born in builder forges, artificial intelligences given physical form and set free to develop their own culture. Every species in the galaxy, Marcus realized with growing amazement, carried the fingerprints of humanity in their DNA. The builders believed in diversity, the Aurora explained during one of their long sessions together. They did not want a galaxy of servants or copies of themselves, but a tapestry of unique perspectives. They created each species to fill a role. Yes, but also gave them the freedom to grow beyond that role, to become more than they were designed to be. Marcus thought about the Valari auctioneer who had laughed at him when he bought this ship, and he felt no anger, only a strange kind of sadness. She had no idea that her ancestors had been uplifted by his ancestors, that the very capacity for laughter she had displayed was a gift from beings who had wanted the universe to be full of joy. Why did they hide this? Marcus asked. Why did they make everyone forget? The Aurora was silent for a moment, and Marcus sensed that even she found this question painful. The builders were not gods, she said finally. They were mortal beings who made mistakes, who struggled with questions of ethics and purpose just as all thinking creatures do, toward the end of their reign. There was a great debate among them about the nature of their creation. Images appeared in Marcus's mind. Vast councils of humans gathered in chambers that floated among the stars, their faces marked by conflict and sorrow. Some believed that the builder species had become a cage for the universe. The Aurora continued, that as long as the created species knew of their creators, they would never truly be free, never able to develop their own identities, always living in the shadow of those who had made them. Marcus watched the ancient humans argue with passion and conviction, each side believing deeply in the righteousness of their position. Others believed that memory was sacred, that the created species deserved to know their origins and to choose for themselves how to relate to that knowledge. What happened? Marcus asked, already sensing that the answer would be tragic. The silence happened, the Aurora replied. I do not know its true nature, because that information was sealed away, even from ships like me. But I know that it ended the debate in a way that no one had expected. The builders chose to leave, to hide, to erase themselves and begin again. She showed Marcus the Great Migration. Billions of humans departing from countless worlds, leaving behind everything they had built, returning to the single blue planet where their journey had begun so long ago. They burned the libraries, the Aurora said. They dismantled the great machines. They altered the genetic memory of every species they had created, removing the instinctive knowledge of the builders that had been woven into their very cells. Marcus watched in silence, as civilization after civilization was carefully, lovingly destroyed. But they could not bring themselves to destroy everything, the Aurora continued. Some of the builders believed that one day, humanity might need its inheritance again, might need the knowledge and power it was giving up. So they hid us. The images changed, showing ships like the Aurora being taken to remote corners of the galaxy, buried in asteroids, hidden in the hearts of gas giants, placed in orbits that would carry them through the void until the right moment. We were scattered across the stars with instructions to wait, the Aurora said, to remain dormant until a human found us, until someone with the right genetic signature and the right qualities of mind awakened us from our long sleep. And I found you, Marcus said, still struggling to accept the enormity of what he was hearing. You found me, the Aurora agreed. But Marcus, you must understand that you are not the only one. Across this galaxy, there are thousands of ships like me, each one waiting for a human to discover it, each one containing pieces of the knowledge that the builders scattered. Marcus felt his heart racing as he grasped the implications. There are others, he said. Other humans who have found ships like you. Not yet, the Aurora replied. You are the first in over 2 million years to successfully awaken a builder vessel. But there will be others. The time is coming when humanity will need its inheritance, and those who are ready will find us. She showed him something new, a map of the galaxy with thousands of points of light scattered throughout, each one representing a hidden ship or a sealed vault or a dormant station waiting to be discovered. The builders did not just leave ships, the Aurora explained. They left everything. Factories that can build fleets in days, terraforming engines that can reshape worlds, Medical technology that can cure any disease and extend life indefinitely. Weapons that can unmake stars. Marcus stared at the map, overwhelmed by the scope of what humanity had abandoned and might now reclaim. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "I am still just a mechanic. I do not know anything about leading people or making decisions that affect the galaxy." The AUROR's response carried a warmth that felt almost maternal. "The builders specifically designed us to activate for individuals like you," she said. "Not for generals or politicians or those who seek power. We were made to respond to curious minds, to patient hearts, to people who see value in things that others throw away." Marcus thought about his life. The years spent in repair bays and engine rooms. The satisfaction he found in bringing broken things back to life. The builders understood that the qualities needed to rebuild are not the same as the qualities needed to conquer. The Aurora continued. They wanted humanity's second chance to begin with people who would ask questions before making demands, who would seek understanding before seeking control. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of prophecy. "You will not be the leader of humanity's return to power, Marcus Cole, but you will be the one who shows them that return is possible." The mechanic who bought a derelict ship for half a credit and found an empire waiting inside. Marcus sat in the command seat of his impossible ship, surrounded by the ghosts of an ancient civilization, and he finally allowed himself to believe everything was about to change. Word got out, as word always does when something impossible happens in a place full of people who make their living trading information. Marcus was never sure who talked first. Whether it was a dock worker who noticed strange energy signatures coming from his private repair bay or a sensor technician who detected the AURO systems coming online. But within a week of awakening the ship, he found himself at the center of the storm. The first to arrive were the Federation intelligence agents. 3 stern-faced humans in crisp uniforms who demanded that Marcus surrender the vessel immediately for security analysis. They spoke to him like he was a child who had found something dangerous, their voices carrying the particular condescension of people who believed they knew what was best for everyone. Marcus refused them politely and closed the door of his repair bay in their faces. The next day, a Corthan battle group dropped out of hyperspace and took up positions around Theta 7. Their angular warships bristling with weapons that could reduce the station to atoms in seconds. The Corthan Admiral, a massive insectoid creature with mandibles that clicked when he spoke, issued a declaration claiming that any unidentified alien technology was the rightful property of the hegemony and would be seized by force if necessary. Marcus watched the display of military power from the Aurora's bridge and felt no fear at all. The Velari Consortium sent diplomats rather than warships, elegant bird-like creatures who spoke in musical tones about salvage, law and property rights, and the importance of proper procedures. They offered Marcus a generous sum for the ship, enough credits to buy a small moon and live in luxury for the rest of his life. He declined with thanks and offered them tea instead, which confused them greatly. The silicates were the last to respond, sending a single message through quantum channels that arrived directly in the Aurora's communication system. Bypassing all normal methods of transmission, they offered Marcus enough wealth to buy an entire planet and suggested that certain powerful individuals would be very grateful if he cooperated. Marcus did not bother to reply to that one as the various powers circled and threatened and negotiated. Marcus spent his time learning everything the Aurora could teach him about the ship's capabilities. What he discovered made the weapons of the Corthan battle group look like children's toys. The Aurora was not armed in any conventional sense, because the builders had moved beyond conventional weapons long before they created her. Instead, she carried reality anchors that could lock sections of space in place. freezing matter and energy in whatever configuration her pilot desired. She had probability manipulators that could make the unlikely become certain and the certain become impossible. She possessed sensors that could peer across light years and through time itself, seeing not just what was, but what had been and what might yet be, and most terrifying of all, she could sing. The builders discovered that the universe responds to certain frequencies, the Aurora explained. Harmonics that resonate with the fundamental structure of reality itself. A ship like me can produce sounds that reshape matter at the atomic level, that convince particles to behave differently, that impose order on chaos or chaos on order. Marcus listened to this explanation with a growing sense of responsibility that weighed on him like a physical burden. He held in his hands the power to destroy fleets, to reshape worlds, to fundamentally alter the balance of power in a galaxy that had spent centuries treating humanity as an afterthought. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that using that power for destruction would be the worst possible choice he could make on the 7th day of the standoff. Marcus finally emerged from his repair bay and broadcast a message to every ship and station and government that had gathered to claim his discovery. Appeared on screens across the system, a middle-aged human in mechanic's coveralls with grease stains on his collar and gray streaks in his hair, looking nothing like the legendary figures that aliens imagined when they thought of powerful beings. "My name is Marcus Cole," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I am a starship mechanic, and I've been working on Theta 7 for 15 years. Some of you know me, most of you do not. None of you expected me to be standing here today with what I have found." The Aurora displayed itself behind him, projecting schematics and capabilities and histories that made admirals gasp and diplomats fall silent. "This ship is called the Aurora," Marcus continued. "She is over 2 million years old, and she was built by my ancestors, by human ancestors." The reaction was immediate and furious, with the Corthan admiral's mandibles clicking in what Marcus now recognized as disbelief, and the Valari diplomats exchanging looks of shock and outrage. "You expect us to believe," the Corthan admiral began, his voice carrying across the communication channels. Marcus held up his hand, and the Aurora responded by projecting something new, the Corthan genetic code, displayed in builder notation, annotated with signatures and markers that matched human DNA with perfect precision. "Your species was designed in laboratories on a world called New Eden," Marcus said, looking directly at the admiral. "You were created to be protectors, guardians of peace, warriors who would fight only when fighting was necessary. The builders loved you and were proud of what you became." The admiral fell silent, his compound eyes wide with an emotion that might have been horror or wonder. Marcus turned to address the Valari diplomats. "Your ancestors were created on a world of endless forests and crystal lakes," he said. "The builders gave you your voices because they wanted the universe to be filled with music. They considered you their greatest artistic achievement." The Valari stared at him, their feathers trembling in a way that Marcus now understood signified deep emotional disturbance. He addressed every species in turn, revealing their origins, showing them the love and intention that had gone into their creation, speaking truths that had been buried for millions of years. When he finished, the communication channels were silent. "I am not telling you this to claim authority over you," Marcus said finally. "The builders gave up that authority long ago, and I have no desire to reclaim it. I am telling you this because you deserve to know the truth, and because I want you to understand something important about the species you have spent centuries looking down upon." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humanity forgot," he said. "We forgot everything we were, everything we built, everything we gave to the universe. We started over with nothing but stone tools and fire, and we climbed back up to the stars through our own effort and determination. We did not know that we had once been great. We only knew that we wanted to be great again. The Aurora systems hummed behind him. Ancient power waiting to be unleashed. This ship is mine, Marcus declared. And there are others like her, hidden across the galaxy, waiting for humans to find them. Your ancestors knew us as builders, as seeders, as the first walkers. Your DNA carries markers we designed. Your civilizations exist because we wanted them to exist. The Corthan Admiral found his voice at last. What do you want from us? He asked. And for the first time there was something like respect in his tone. Marcus smiled. And it was the smile of a man who had spent his whole life being underestimated, and had finally found the words to express what that felt like. I want you to treat my people with dignity, he said. Not because we can destroy you, though we could. Not because we created you, though we did. But because every thinking being deserves respect. And humanity has earned that respect 1,000 times over through centuries of patience and perseverance. He gestured at the ships surrounding the station, at the weapons pointed at his repair bay, at all the might that had gathered to take from him what he had fairly purchased. You can try to take this ship from me, he said. You can try to suppress what I have revealed. You can pretend that nothing has changed. But I am not the only human who is going to find one of these. There are thousands of ships waiting, thousands of vaults full of knowledge. And humanity is waking up. Marcus leaned forward, and something old stirred behind his eyes. Something that remembered building empires and seeding galaxies and walking between stars when the universe was young. Some of my people will not be as patient as I am, he said quietly. Some of them will remember what we were and want to reclaim it by force. You might want to consider being very careful about how you treat humanity from now on. Because the next human who finds a ship like mine might not be a peaceful mechanic who just wants to be treated fairly. He reached out and ended the broadcast, leaving the gathered powers to contemplate a galaxy that had suddenly become far more complicated than they had ever imagined. The blockade dissolved within hours of Marcus's broadcast, with the Corthan battle group withdrawing first and the other powers following shortly after. No one wanted to be the species that fired the first shot against the inheritor of the builders. Not when the full extent of human capabilities remained unknown and the threat of other awakening ships loomed over every strategic calculation. The Federation quietly changed humanity's official classification from developing species to status under review, a bureaucratic phrase that meant nothing and everything at the same time. Diplomats who had spent their careers ignoring human concerns suddenly found themselves very interested in establishing positive relations with Earth and its colonies. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were approved overnight, and human representatives found themselves invited to councils and committees where their species had never been welcome before. Marcus watched all of this unfold from the bridge of the Aurora, monitoring news feeds and diplomatic channels as the galaxy slowly adjusted to its new reality. He could have claimed any role he wanted in this changed world, could have positioned himself as a leader or a prophet or a king, but instead he made a different choice. 2 weeks after his broadcast, Marcus reopened his repair bay on Theta 7 and went back to work. His first customer was a young Valari trader whose cargo shuttle had developed engine trouble during a routine supply run. And Marcus fixed the problem the same way he had fixed thousands of problems before, with patience, skill, and a genuine love for making broken things work again. Word spread quickly that the human who had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization was back to fixing ships for reasonable rates. And soon Marcus had more work than he could handle. Pilots and captains who had never given him a second thought now went out of their way to bring their vessels to his bay. Curious to meet the mechanic who had revealed humanity's secret history, some of them asked him questions about the builders, about the Aurora, about what humanity planned to do with its rediscovered power. Marcus answered when he could, and admitted ignorance when he could not. Never pretending to have more wisdom than he actually possessed, the Aurora remained docked in the bay beside his workshop. Her systems active, but her weapons powered down. A constant reminder of what Marcus had found, and what he had chosen not to use, he spoke with her often during quiet moments, learning more about the history of the builders and the philosophy that had guided their actions. "Do you regret it?" Aurora asked him one evening as he worked on recalibrating a sensor array for a silicate freighter. Choosing this life instead of the power that was offered to you. Marcus considered the question carefully, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. "I have been thinking about what you told me," he said. "About why the builders created the species they created. About what they hoped the universe would become." He looked out through the transparent wall of his repair bay at the stars beyond. Countless points of light that suddenly seemed closer than they had before. They wanted diversity, he continued. They wanted a galaxy full of different perspectives and different ways of being. Not a universe shaped entirely by human hands and human minds. The Aurora hummed in acknowledgement, her systems responding to his thoughts in ways that still amazed him. "If I took the power you offer and used it to reshape the galaxy according to my own vision, I would be doing exactly what the builders chose not to do," Marcus said. "I would be making the universe smaller instead of larger, replacing possibility with certainty." He turned back to his work, his hands moving with the confidence of long practice. "The best thing I can do for humanity is show them that power does not have to corrupt, that strength does not have to mean domination, that we can find our place in the stars without becoming the very thing our ancestors walked away from, across the galaxy." Other changes were taking place that Marcus could only partially see through the AURORA sensors on a dozen different worlds. Humans were beginning to dream strange dreams, visions of stars they had never seen, and words and languages that had been dead for longer than their species had existed. Scientists studying ancient ruins on remote planets were finding hidden chambers that their instruments had somehow missed before. Chambers that responded only to human touch. A retired explorer living on the edge of known space woke one morning with an irresistible urge to travel to a specific set of coordinates that she could not explain knowing. And when she arrived, she found a ship just like the Aurora, waiting for her in an asteroid field that no one had ever bothered to survey. The awakening was beginning. Slowly and quietly, exactly as the builders had planned, Marcus followed these reports when he could, tracking the gradual spread of humanity's rediscovered inheritance. But he made no move to contact the other inheritors or to coordinate their actions. Each of them would have to find their own path, make their own choices, discover for themselves what kind of humans they wanted to be in this changed galaxy. That was the whole point. After all, one evening, several months after the broadcast that had changed everything, a young Valari woman came to Marcus's repair bay with a question rather than a broken ship. She was an apprentice engineer. She explained, newly graduated from one of the Valari technical academies, and she had traveled a long way to meet the mechanic who had revealed the truth about her people's origins. "I need to understand," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that Marcus now knew had been deliberately designed by human hands. "Why did your ancestors create us and then leave us to develop on our own? Why did they not stay to guide us, to shape us into what they wanted us to be?" Marcus set aside the power coupling he had been working on and gave the young Valari his full attention. "I've been asking myself similar questions," he admitted, "and I think I finally understand the answer." He gestured for her to sit, and she perched on a supply crate with the natural grace of her species. "The builders created you because they loved the idea of you," Marcus said. "They imagined beings who could sing and soar and create beauty that humans could never create on their own. And they brought that imagination to life. The young Valari listened intently, her feathers shifting with colors that indicated deep concentration. But love does not mean control, Marcus continued. The best thing a parent can do for a child is teach them what they need to know and then let them find their own way. The builders understood that if they stayed, if they guided and shaped and directed, the created species would never truly be their own people. He smiled at her, seeing in her curious eyes the same hunger for understanding that had driven him to buy a derelict ship for half a credit. They left because they loved you, he said. They erased themselves from your memory because they wanted you to be free. And now that you know the truth, you get to decide what that means for yourself and for your people. The young Valari was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. And what about you? She asked finally. What does the truth mean for you? Marcus looked around his repair bay, at the tools and parts and half-finished projects that had defined his life for 15 years. And then at the ancient ship waiting patiently in the dock beside him. It means I have a choice, he said. I can try to be what my ancestors were, builders and shapers and rulers of stars, or I can try to be what they became, patient and humble and willing to start over from nothing. He picked up the power coupling and went back to work, his hands steady and sure. Humanity already tried being gods, he said. It did not work out the way we hoped. Maybe this time we will try something different. We will earn our place in the galaxy, one fixed engine and one honest conversation at a time. And we will see if that works better. The young Valari watched him work for a while longer, then thanked him and left, carrying with her questions that would take years to answer outside the repair bay. The stars turned slowly in their ancient dance, and somewhere among them, more ships were waiting to be found by curious humans who would have to decide for themselves what kind of species they wanted to be. Marcus smiled and tightened the bolt, content to let the future unfold at its own pace. He was just a mechanic who had bought a derelict ship for half a credit. And that was exactly what the galaxy needed him to be.